With 3 games to go, it was Ajax's title to lose, but in recent weeks their nerves had become evident. Behind them, the battle for Europe continued, with Utrecht hoping to snatch third from Feyenoord as they faced Twente. Feyenoord hosted PSV in the big game of the weekend, which would have a big say in the title race. All the goals from all 9 games are coming up. We start in Tilburg, where Willem II needed a win to keep alive their hopes of escaping the bottom 3. Defeat to Heracles would mean the best they could hope for would be the relegation playoff. The sides drew 1-1 in the first meeting in August, with Jesse Bosch scoring his first of the season. And the midfielder was also the first to have a go here, stopped by Fabian de Keyser. The visitors were already safe and had an outside chance of finishing 8th or 9th to snatch a European playoff place. They were the ones taking the lead with a quarter of an hour gone, converting their first chance of the game, which came from a free kick. The lively Jur Talviti fouled by defender Rob Nizet. With interim coach Christoph Albrecht taking charge in the home dugout for the first time, they conceded again from a set piece, an Achilles heel this season. A fortunate one perhaps, though, for Ivan Mesic, who scored with the back of his shoulder. The first goal for the club from the Slovakian defender, and only his 3rd ever. The last was back in October 2021. It led to Heracles enjoying a spell on top, one that they couldn't manage to cap with a second goal. Talviti was having success on the right, but in the centre, Chisholmkamp, the former Willem II striker, couldn't squeeze the ball in. Thomas Didionodel saving from close range. Seconds later, they had an even better chance, as the Tilburgers turned the ball over, another problem they've had throughout the season. They've been susceptible to pace on the counter-attack, and Suf Podgoranu showed that, setting up Hornemans for this free hit. One he scuffed, and then seemingly chose to blame the turf for his misfortune. Despite their trouble finishing, Heracles had the second most goals of any side below the top 8, and they carried on creating decent chances. Podgoranu himself was presented with the next. The Israeli winger has only managed 1 goal so far since joining on loan from Maccabi Haifa, and his shot wasn't quite up to scratch. Too close to the keeper, although he still had to react quickly to turn it away. More good work from Talviti, who was proving hard to tie down on the wing. It was the hosts that closed the half on the front foot, with their most creative player, Ringa Mervelt, dancing his way through. Only to also find finishing a little bit tricky. This was much easier for de Keyser to save than it really should have been. They took that momentum into the second half, though, and scored from a set piece too. Jeremy Bokila nodding in just his 4th of this season, and a first in 2025. This one met on the full by the 36-year-old, whose goals were a big part of last season's promotion campaign from the second tier. And for a while, they looked like taking a grip on the game. Mesic having to intervene at the last moment here to make sure that Emilio Kehrer didn't get a shot away. Seven minutes later, the German winger did produce a decent effort, which led to another fingertip save from the Heracles keeper. A much better second half display from Willem II, but they remain the division's 2nd lowest scorers. Only Almere City have managed fewer goals. A moment later, they were behind again after conceding an unnecessary penalty. Amin Lachka got too close to Mats Roth, the midfielder's arms over the top of the fullback as he motored into the area. Referee Jeroen Manschot decided that was enough for a spot kick. And so up stepped Hornkamp, who'd had 2 seasons with the Tilburgers from 2021 to 2023. He dispatched it and celebrated it with a minimum of fuss. An 8th of the season, 6 of those have come in the last 8 games since the beginning of March. He departed soon after, but there should have been more goals. His replacement, Mario Engels, somehow failing to turn that one in at the far post from close range, when it looked easier to score from Podgornu's flicker. The Israeli was then involved in a spat late on in stoppage time, which saw the game temporarily halted. He reacted angrily when he felt that Mikhail Turpan was making too much of their clash. The referee's assistant got an earful too, and that led to a cup being thrown on from the crowd, which in turn caused the referee to bring a stop to proceedings, with a warning about throwing objects onto the field or at anyone else being shown on the big screen. A point might have been enough for the hosts in the end, but they got nothing, and they'll now have to use the final two games to stay ahead of RKC and Almere City below them. The relegation playoff is the maximum achievable for Albrecht, with games to come against Pexvolle and NAC Breda. Time was also running out for RKC, who sat bottom, a point behind Almere City and 6 off Willem II. Given their vastly inferior goal difference, defeat here would see them effectively relegated. But they were the ones taking a vital early lead. Rishon El Margaret succeeding at the second attempt, against some ineffective Heerenveen defending. Just a 5th goal of the season for the former Ajax and RZ youngster, but it was the return of captain Oscar Zawada which made the difference, the Polish striker, the one laying on the chance. The visitors looking alarmingly open, right down the middle. RKC had lost their last 3 and they hadn't tasted victory in 9 matches. They were clearly nervous and prone to defensive mistakes, but Heerenveen surprisingly couldn't capitalise, despite their recent return to form. 3 wins and 4, lifting them up to 8th. RKC coach Henk Fraser has already announced that he's going to step down at the end of the season after 2 years in charge. His side and Heerenveen were jointly the worst performing teams away from home this season. The Frisians had lost 12 of their 15 so far, winning only at Willem II and NAC Breda. But they equalised when a reckless sliding challenge from Julian Lelyveld resulted in a penalty. Edwin van der Graaf calling it once there'd been no advantage after the challenge on Levi Smuts. Fraser either didn't agree or was ruefully shaking his head at yet another strange decision from one of his defenders. Diving in like this inside the area was always going to be risky. Jon Niculescu stepped up, and the Moldovan scored for the 2nd game in a row, making it 3 in 5 games overall. The home side remained the better, but without converting that into goals. They did keep Andries Noppert busy in the visiting goal, though. Faisal Al-Masyani took a shot on from the edge of the area, and when the ball was recycled, Zawada popped his header over the top. So there was plenty of optimism as they entered half-time. Robin Veltman had had plenty of injury issues to deal with since taking over, but he still guided them to the cusp of the European playoffs. Here, Alireza Yarnbaksh was the latest to be unavailable. RKC, in contrast, had Moa Hatteran back, and he was the first to test out Noppert in the second half. The visitors lost another player soon after, this time to a red card, and Ilyas Sabawi's subsequent suspension ruled him out for the rest of the regular season. Another risky sliding tackle, this time 2-footed with his studs showing. An initial yellow card was soon being upgraded to a red, once the official had been called over to have a look at the incident again. The first sending off of the winger's career. However, if they do make it into the playoffs, he will be available again. It took a triple change from the home side to finally help convert their dominance into a winning position. Mikkel Kramer, Gottfried Rumeratu and Chris Lakesa, the players coming on, with Roshan van Eymer, Tim van der Loo and Zawada departing. fresh instructions too, which were soon being hidden away from prying eyes. Heerenveen's last change saw a debut for 17-year-old Kai Janssen, who replaced their goalscorer moments later. With time running out, RKC finally struck to restore their lead after some concerted pressure, keeping alive faint hopes and reinforcing belief that Fraser and his players still have in a great escape. Back in November, it was a Hatteran that scored a stoppage-time penalty to salvage a 1-1 draw. Here, Moroccan midfielder Yassine Oukili was the man popping up with a vital goal. His first in 3 months. And with 15 minutes to go, the fans had something to get behind. Fraser had understandably struck more of a downbeat tone last week following a 6-1 humiliation in Groningen, but after this he was bullish again, particularly after the third goal scored by Lokesa just 4 minutes later. Each of his 3 have come in a game where they've picked up points. He's helped them to 2 wins and a draw. He may be one of the shortest on the field, but he took up a good position between 2 bigger Heerenveen centre-halves. Perhaps the great escape really is on. But they have to go to Feyenoord next before hosting Go Ahead Eagles on the final day. RKC climbed off the bottom, and they're now within 3 points of Willem II. Heerenveen had enough of a cushion to remain in 8th. They will have the same final 2 opponents, but the other way round. Willem II's defeat on Friday night meant that Breda knew they were safe as they travelled to Sittard. The hosts were one of a number of sides still in with a shout of finishing 8th or 9th. But for that, they'd have to win here. And they were the ones showing more ambition. Kai Zeerhuis helping to win an early corner. The quality wasn't quite there, though, from either side. Seb van Ottela taking a wild swipe at this one, perhaps seeing his name in lights. NAC coach Carl Hofkens said that his side's will to win was definitely still there, but they couldn't really influence the game much as an attacking force in the first half. And when chances came Fortuna's way, as they more often did, they weren't taken. Bojan Radulovic unable to mark his 3rd start with a first goal, thanks to some excellent goalkeeping from Daniel Bilica. Van Ottela has gone 70 games since his only senior goal, which came for Heerenveen against Feyenoord in February 2023. But that didn't deter him from having another go here midway through the first half. The goal they did get came when the visitors shot themselves in the foot. Clint Leemans gifting the ball under pressure. Ryan Fosso crossing for Zeerhuis. The pass to the skipper was a risk too far, really, but for Zeerhuis, the goal was a real reward. His first since coming back from a serious knee injury in February, one which had cost him 9 months out of the game. It had happened this time last year, just as he was on a roll, having scored 12 goals to help Fortuna into a similar position as this season. They remained on top for the rest of the half, and Zeerhuis was given another chance to double their lead, this time from a set piece, when Enis Mahmutovic brought down Radulovic. Hofkens seemed unable to rally his troops, but they did survive and went into the break just 1-0 down. A lead that had looked secure in the first period soon seemed anything but, as NAC had the ball in the net just 4 minutes after the restart. Leo Sauer rounding off a quick break, streaking clear and benefiting from a deflection off himself as well as the goalkeeper, Matthijs Brandenhorst. And the goal did stand for a while. But in covering his mouth to speak, it seemed that Sauer knew something was amiss. He wasn't offside, that much was clear from the replays. But these pictures also showed the ball had bounced in off the winger's arm. And once these pictures had been checked by the VAR, the goal was rightly ruled out. It would have been an eighth for the Slovakian teenager who's long known from Feyenoord, but instead, Fortuna coach Danny Bass was by far the happier. Not for long though, he's one of the most demonstrative coaches in the Eredivisie, and he spends most of the game on his feet. He was off his seat again when Sherian Valerius snuck through his defence. The ball clawed away in the nick of time by his keeper, but the defender's still got a roaster. As an attacking wing-back, Valerius proved a useful outlet in the second half, providing another cross here which Sauer only just failed to connect with. The half chances had been there to snatch something. Hofkins said he would have his players firing properly again for the last two against NAC and Willem II. They kept on pushing, even though, in the words of Lehmann's their skipper, the tank was empty. There wasn't too much of a late threat from the hosts to worry about as they closed in on their 11th win of the season. All but three of them have come at home. The last three by 1-0. Boy Kemper could have done more here perhaps had he expected the ball to reach him. There was still time for some magic from one of Fortuna's most experienced players, left-back Mitchell Dykes, who's played 170 Eredivisie games without finding the net. Here he embarked on a Messi-like run which threatened to end the long wait. But it fell on his weaker right foot, which wasn't strong enough to deliver what would have been just the fourth senior goal of his career and a goal of the season contender. So, Seerhaus remained the match winner as Fortuna kept hold of 9th place and closed the gap on Heerenveen above them to just a point. Almere City and Utrecht come next. Almere assistant coach Anu Staskier was in charge on the touchline as they hosted Sparta Rotterdam, with coach Jeroen Rijsdijk suspended against his former club. Sitting bottom and 5 points adrift of the relegation playoff place, defeat for the hosts would make it very difficult to avoid a return to the second tier after 2 years of top-flight football. And when they fell behind on 3 minutes, their job seemed to get even tougher. However, Tobias Lauritsen's goal was soon being ruled out for a foul. The Norwegian had wrestled defender Joey Jacobs to the ground. Referee Allard Lindhout wasn't about to change his mind. So, no need for Sparta coach Moni Stein to worry. One of the home side's 20 points had come when the sides met in Rotterdam in October, although they also threw away a 2-0 first-half lead in that one to draw 2-2. And they didn't get to grips with Lauritsen, who came close to one that would have counted just over 10 minutes later. Mitchell Verbergen providing the cross. After taking time to readjust when Stein took over, Sparta had lost only one of the last 8, which came last time out at home to FC Twente. But they could have been behind when Junior Cadil got his first-sided goal. The French winger cracking one off the bar from the edge of the box. An incident which also saw Sparta lose their own number 11, Shunsuke Mito, to injury. The Japanese winger seemed to have tweaked something in trying to challenge his opposite number. He departed just before the half hour. The man replacing him was Mohamed Nasser. He was soon into the action. A neat turn, helping to set up another chance for Lauritsen. He tangled with James Lawrence this time, leading to shouts for a Sparta penalty. Jacobs too had his hand all over him. The VAR did have a look, but decided Lindhout hadn't made an obvious mistake by not awarding it, even though there was some shirt pulling. Although Almere City have picked up since Reichstag took over, their attempts to play a more expansive game haven't really been successful. Last season's hard to watch but dogged defensive displays were what kept them up after a maiden Eredivisie campaign. No one scored fewer goals than their 21, and they were trying to avoid a 17th game without finding the net. Stein urged his side to step things up a gear or two in the second half, but he resisted making further changes. They certainly followed his instructions, and Mitchell van Bergen in particular responded with one of the goals of the round. The winger called it the best he's ever scored, and it was his third since March, having gone almost 4 years before that without one. No fluke either. He revealed afterwards that he regularly practices this in training. It is certainly one to admire from every angle, and his teammates loved it too. He's on loan from FC Twente and set to go back there at the end of the season, but he wouldn't say for now whether he'd be up for a longer stay in Rotterdam. He was at it again soon after, as Sparta swiftly turned defence into attack. Set pieces were looking like Almere City's best route back into the game, but this one nearly ended up costing them another goal. On his right foot this time, Van Bergen was on the end of things, but none of his teammates in the box could follow up on the shot. Midway through the half, the roles of Lauritsen and Jacobs were reversed. The Sparta striker denying the defender on the goal line. Just one goal so far for the former AZ youngster. 2 minutes later, though, another central defender did have success. But at the other end, Mike Erdhausen was sent off late on in the first meeting between these two. Here, he reacted well at the far post to turn in just his third senior goal. And the first in over a year. Van Bergen knew exactly how he felt. A really crisp half volley to give Sparta a comfortable lead, one that they never looked like giving up. The hosts threatened a response with 2 efforts from Tom Hay and Thomas Robinet, but again they lacked the finishing quality. 11 of their goals have come since the turn of the year, but only 2 wins, both surprisingly away at Utrecht and Willem II. Their 2 wins here came in the first half of the season against NEC and Heerenveen. And with the final 60 seconds approaching, they conceded again, as Sparta ended the game in style with another breakaway. Van Bergen and Pelle Clement combining for Christian Linssen to slide in and score. The second goal of his loan from Ajax, first in over 2 months. Well timed in both the run and the pass. It cemented their 4th consecutive unbeaten away match. They've conceded only once in that time. It's 1 win in 11 for the hosts, who have Fortuna Sittard and AZ still to play. Sparta are a point outside the European playoffs, but now have to face Utrecht and PSV. There was plenty of fanfare ahead of the season's last IJssel derby between Pek Zwolle and Go Ahead Eagles, one which the away side began 13 points better off in 7th. The hosts were 14th and safe from relegation. Mathematically, they could still join the Eagles in the European playoffs. Realistically, Johnny Jansen's men would have to win his final 3 games before his assistant Henry van der Weegt takes over in the summer. They'd also need other results to go their way. But regardless of league position, this is always fiercely contested. One of those games where the form book goes out of the window. Form had been a little mixed of late for the visitors, their cup final win against AZ on penalties being the only victory in the last 6 matches. Zwolle had won 2 of their last 11, including last time out at NAC Breda, and they had the first chance after some intricate work around the box. Players seemingly too polite to take on a shot, offering each other chances before Yunus Namli had a go. An important deflection taking his effort away, denying him a second goal in as many games. "10 minutes later came one of the best chances of the game. which fell to Odysseus Valanas, who surprisingly started up front ahead of top scorer Dylan Venter. His slip at the vital moment denied him the opener. It would have been a tight offside decision, and from this angle, he looked just off. But his miss made that academic. It was another low-key start from the Eagles, who've looked a little spent in matches since the high of their cup final success. That meant the home side had plenty to cheer as their players took the initiative. Filip Krastev, this time on the end of another good break. They don't struggle to create chances, and only two sides outside the top eight have scored more than them. But here, the finishing wasn't as good as it needed to be. There was another case in point just before the half hour. Dylan Mbayo shooting wide from a great position just by the penalty spot. He hasn't scored since a double against Fortuna Sittard in early November. Eagles coach Paul Simonis must have given his players a bit of a rocket at half-time, because they looked sharper from the restart and took the lead inside 5 minutes. He's already publicly and privately tried to coax an improvement out of winger Oliver Antman, the Eridivisie's leading provider of assists. That paid off as the Finn delivered a 15th, all from open play. Evert Lindhorst on the end of this, with just his second goal this season. Like his teammates, Antman had been experiencing a dip in recent weeks, but his tally of assists is now the highest from open play since Dusan Tadic in the 2021-22 season. And he'll be a hard player to hold on to in the summer, even though they do have Europa League football. As well as announcing their new coach last week, Zwolle revealed their former player and commercial director Joost Broze will return to the club as a general manager, starting in the summer. With an hour gone and still nothing to show for their multiple chances, the hosts could easily have conceded a second goal and faced a dispiriting defeat. Antman beating the offside trap and setting himself up for a very good-looking goal. Credit goes to keeper Jasper Schendela for standing his ground. He was becoming very familiar with the visiting number 19 as he popped up not just on the right, but through the middle. Seeing this one deflected narrowly past the post too. Now it was the Eagles' turn to rue their missed opportunities. The home side found themselves an equaliser moments later. Jamiro Montero lofting the ball into the box, and there wasn't much of a touch on it from Namli as he burst through unchecked, but it was just enough to fool the keeper Jari de Bussen and send the ball between his legs. So he was the one credited with it rather than Montero. Just ahead of the final 20 minutes, two injured players made their returns. Left-back Dean James had been out 5 weeks with a hamstring injury. Winger Jakob Brum hadn't played since the middle of February due to a broken foot. Striker Finn Stokkers had also come on at the same time and began a move which he also very nearly finished off as the game became a little more stretched due to the changes and the inevitable tiredness on a hot day. He too has had a difficult season with an eye injury keeping him out 4.5 months. This was only his third appearance since the middle of December, and he hasn't scored since early October. The last chance to be a hero fell to 20-year-old Toon Huiselhat, who could have capped just a third senior appearance with a first senior goal and put himself down in club history, but he didn't miss by much. It meant a 4th consecutive draw in this fixture though, so Janssen will leave Zwolle without a derby win to his name, even though he said they had been the better team in each of those 4. Willem II come next, Go Ahead Eagles will host Heerenveen. Utrecht had the chance to put the pressure back on Feyenoord. A win in Enschede would put them both level on points, as well as dealing a blow to Twente's hopes of finishing fifth. There were 11 points between these two, so Utrecht were too far ahead to catch, and they were already guaranteed to finish at least fourth. After Bas Kuipers conceded this free kick, they also carved out a decent chance to take the lead. A well-worked routine followed with the ball clipped over to Oscar Fraulo, who set up Sebastian Haller. Close, but not quite. But full marks for invention. For Utrecht coach Ron Jans, this was a return to the side he left in June 2023 with the aim of some time off, only to be called back to rescue Utrecht 3 months later. It wasn't long before two of his old players combined to great effect. Sem Stein picking up Michel Flupp, whose first touch was sublime, and his second resulted in the goal. One of the goals of the weekend, and a first since mid-November for the midfielder. His future remains up in the air, but he wants to wait till the end of the season to sort that one out. A sixth assist for Stein, who's now been involved in 30 goals. After a 5-game winless run, he scored to help Twente taste success again at Sparta last week. Utrecht had won their last 3, scoring at least 3 in each. And they'd suffered just 1 defeat in the last 9. Jans handed a first start since January to striker Milano Jonathan, who's had his injury issues since joining from Vitesse. He came very close to a first goal. Paxton Aronson came even closer. The US midfielder did have the ball in the net from this corner, latching on to Haller's header. And for a while, the goal stood, before the officials had had a chance to double-check the replay pictures. When they did, they quickly realised that he was offside. Referee Mark Naxterhal was soon communicating that. One of Twente's goals last week came from midfielder Mikhail Sadele, and the Czech was on the hunt again, whipping in a free kick which Vasilis Barkas had to turn over. That one was close, and so was the next effort from Dan Rotz 11 minutes into the second half. Ricky von Wolfswinkel with the first cushioned effort, which Kuipers threw himself at. Rotz following it up, put it away and asked the questions later. The flag, though, went up. This did look much tighter, and Twente felt as much too. From the first angle, it seemed Haller was playing him onside. However, it took almost 4 minutes of consultation before this goal was eventually given. All 3 of his league goals have come this year, but this was a first in 3 months. And given the wait, it was well celebrated. Not the return that Jans had planned, though. He'd won 1-0 on his first return in February of last year, and they'd only failed to score 4 times in the Eredivisie all season, so the prospect of a comeback in the final quarter of the game remained very much alive, particularly when there were 2 potential handballs here, both from Zadalek, whose body first of all seemed to deflect the ball onto his hand, and then he fell on top of it too, but the referee deemed that neither met the threshold of a penalty. In a battle of nearly moments and disallowed goals, it followed that the hosts would have one of their own chalked off, and so it proved, as Alec van Horenbeek turned the ball in, only to see the flag raised once again. In the right place when Kuipers hit the bar, his 4th goal for the club didn't materialise. This time the decision was not reversed. Offside at the far post against Stein. Jans threw on another striker, Noah Ahayo, in the closing stages for Haller, but he didn't get much of a sniff, and it was Stein that threatened to trouble the scoreboard again with one of his favourite dipping volleys to keep Barkas on his toes. The visitors were missing the thread of the suspended Miguel Rodriguez on one side and the injured Johan Katlin on the other, but another Utrecht forward did provide some late drama. David Min, who'd come on midway through the half in place of Adrian Blake. They moved the ball quickly from back to front, even without Kathleen's usual pace. And Min was denied the chance to make stoppage time a tense affair. At the other end, former Brentford and Dortmund youngster Colbein Finson breathed a sigh's relief as his poor back pass didn't result in the third. Yunus Taha thwarted by the athletic Barkas, who used his long reach to good effect. But Twente had already done enough. Their final home game comes in midweek against RZ before they end the season at Ajax. Utrecht have Sparta and then Fortuna Sittard. The big game of the weekend saw PSV in second travel to third place Feyenoord and make a nervy start. Igor Paschal unable to capitalise at first on the mistake from Walter Benitez. This was a game all Ajax fans were watching in earnest to see if the Rotterdam side could halt PSV's momentum. And moments later, it seemed the answer was yes, as they took the lead in unlikely fashion. A long clearance from Timon Wellenreuter earned the keeper an assist, as Paschal took it down brilliantly and produced this dinked finish. A 15th league goal from the Brazilian, increasing an already career-best tally, but at the other end, Wellenreuter was getting plenty of plaudits too. The German became only the fourth Feyenoord keeper this century to make an assist, and the first since Rob van Dijk in 2009. There was plenty on this for both sides. PSV could move a point behind Ajax with a win. Victory for Feyenoord would close the gap on their opponents to 2 points. And their dream start continued with a second goal 5 minutes later. From right back, Hidera Reed, who'd only got his first Eredivisie goal in last week's win at Heracles. First at home now for the 18-year-old. This was bearing out their record as the division's form side, with 7 straight wins. No one has managed to beat them in the Eredivisie since Robin van Persie took over. An unusually lax defensive start for PSV, who'd won their last 4, scoring at least 3 times in each. Now they'd have to do the same to win here. Victory for the visitors would also secure second place and a Champions League slot, although that looked a big ask. And if Anis Hajmusa had played the ball in earlier, it could have been 3-0. PSV caught out again with a ball over the top. Feyenoord are famous for their roaring starts here at the camp, and they could have been out of sight after 20 minutes, with Paschal almost grazing the woodwork with a curling free kick. However, their storm died down from around 25 minutes, and the remainder of the half was more even, although the visitors still barely threatened, apart from this speculative effort from Joey Veerman. Coach Peter Bos said before the game he felt that his was the most talented squad in the Eredivisie, but they needed a real reset at half-time. He did that by getting angry and making tactical tweaks, but not personnel changes. And the roles were reversed as PSV made a fast start and scored early to give themselves a foothold. This time, it was Feyenoord whose defending was suspect, failing to clear despite repeated chances. Ivan Perisic lashing it into the corner. He's been arguably PSV's best player in this recent upturn, which was sparked by their 7-1 humiliation against Arsenal in March. They'd lost only once in the 8 games since to Ajax, and in that time Perisic has found the net 8 times. It was his hat-trick which fired them past Fortuna Sittard last week, and he was also the one providing the assist for Noah Lang's equaliser, a shot which Wellenreuter probably should have kept out. The winger had been getting stick from the home fans all game, so he chose to goad them with his celebration. Again, Feyenoord failed to defend the threat effectively. 2 players coming close to him, but he still found a way past them for a lucky 13th goal of the season. The hosts carried on wilting in the heat as PSV maintained their energy levels, and in the latter stages there looked to be only one winner. Lang probably should have put the game to bed here when Malik Tillman's good work set him up. But he went for height and power rather than placement, meaning a let-off for a tiring defence. Things got worse for the hosts, who were clinging on when Reed lost the ball to Lang and sent him tumbling. As the last man, it was deemed a denial of a goal-scoring opportunity, and Danny McKaylee brought out the red card. Van Persie disagreed, saying Reed's intention was simply to play the ball. His movement, that of someone trying to pass, when Lang nipped in. The outcome, though, was the key thing here, preventing the winger from progressing. It was the next incident, though, which led to PSV winning the game. Tillman turning the ball in when Luke de Jong's header hit the bar. And even though this was ruled out for offside, the time that the VAR took to check the situation subsequently led to the stoppage time being almost doubled. De Jong, the one beyond the last line of defenders. But the initial 5 minutes had already been upgraded to 6, and then 10. And with Feyenoord camped in their penalty area, Lang pounced again, sweeping Mauro Jr.'s cross into the corner and taunting the Feyenoord fans once more. A goal which put PSV right back in the title race, closing the gap on Ajax to just a point. Had they been beaten here, Ajax could have won the Eredivisie with victory at home against NEC. The result also ended a remarkable run for Feyenoord. The first time since November 1992 they'd lost a home league game when winning at half-time. And for just the second time in the Eredivisie, they've lost all 4 games against Ajax and PSV. Matches with RKC and Van Persie's old side Heerenveen to come. PSV have Heracles and Sparta Rotterdam. After a big dip in form through March and April, RZ could only move up or down 1 place from their current 6th. They were already guaranteed a slot in the Europa Conference League playoffs, while Groningen, 12 points behind them, were hoping to snatch one too. In Luciano Valente, the visitors had a creative midfielder who's the subject of plenty of outside interest, and he showed why, sitting Maxim Dekker down before coming close to the opener. The Dutch under-21 international only has 2 goals so far, but he's assisted a goal in each of his last 3 games as the Northerners have progressed up the table. They'd scored 10 goals in the last 2, beating RKC 6-1 last week and Heracles 4-1 the week before. RZ, meanwhile, picked up their first win in 9 matches against Go Ahead Eagles. And in the 9th minute, they were the ones taking the lead. Sven Meinens poking in a cross from Denso Cassius. This was his first league goal at home since the middle of September. Groningen's defenders slow to react and left looking pretty static. This wasn't the only boost for RZ coach Martin Martens. Before the game, their former midfielder extended his contract for 2 more years until 2028, with his assistants doing the same. The club's hierarchy are happy with the direction things are going in, despite the loss in this season's cup final. And they continue to enjoy the better of the play, with Ernest Poku going close. The swagger, which had been missing for some time, seemed to be back as confidence returned after last week's success. Some fancy footwork helped to set Ruben von Bommel away. And even though he didn't get a free kick that he wanted, Groningen did conspire to give the ball away again to Meinens, who nearly shaved the post. Groningen at this point was struggling to get into RZ territory at times. Valente continued to carry a threat, but when his chip ball was intercepted, the home side broke to score again. Remarkably, this touch from Mex Merdink became an assist thanks to the pace and the skill of Poku, who raced clear to deliver a brilliant solo goal up there with the best of the week. It was only his 2nd ever in the Eredivisie after March's goal at NEC, with another couple coming in the Dutch Cup. None though quite as eye-catching as this. The visitors continued to look nervy, coughing up possession in a dangerous area, getting lucky, but Merdink couldn't squeeze this in. Keeper Etienne Vassen to the rescue once again. The striker was continuing to deputise for the injured Troy Parrott, while AZ were also still without their captain Yuri Klasi and defender Walter Huss, who was suspended after last week's red card. Merdink's runs from deep were causing the Groningen backline trouble, and another one saw him fire only just wide. Determined to do better after the break, the Northerners changed things only at left-back, but they did create the first chance of the second half. Valente inevitably involved again, looking to mirror the achievements of AZ's number 10. He was the one setting up Jörg Schröders, who brought a rare save from the home keeper, Rome Jadon Owusu-Aduro. Visiting coach Dick Lukin still felt that his side played fairly well, just not well enough in the key moments as it turned out. However, it was a silly foul which led to AZ's third goal. Merdink manhandled off the ball by Hilmar Ekdal, much to his frustration. He worked that out of his system by scoring from the resulting free kick, beating Groningen's offside trap comprehensively. Beginning offside, he then made a little dart back just at the right moment, ensuring he could then meet Per Kortmeiner's free kick. Ninth goal of the season, but only his second as a starter. AZ scoring 3, as they did here when these two met in the Cup in December. August league meeting had ended goalless, an early blow to AZ's European hopes, and the first time in the campaign that either had failed to score. After a shower of goals in recent weeks, this was only the third time this year that Groningen hadn't found the net, and they could have conceded more when Wouter Prins fouled Jaden Adai and gave AZ another set-piece platform, the young defender picking up a yellow card. Thankfully for them, Vassen was alert at his far post to parry a header from Alexander Penetra. Mechalado also came close from a later dead ball, the winger grazing the top of the bar moments after coming on to replace Poku. The frame of the goal was left rattling again from almost the last kick of the game, as AZ picked their way through once again. K. Smith doing well before Cassius took aim and ended the game in painful fashion after he was hit with the actual last kick of the game. Back-to-back 3-0 wins for AZ, who kept pace with FC Twente, their next opponents. Groningen return home to face Ajax. The league leaders now had to respond to PSV's win with their oldest ever lineup in the Eredivisie. The average age of 29 years, 201 days was mainly down to the return of 41-year-old Remco Pasveer in goal and 32-year-old Wout Weghorst up front. An early penalty was denied them, even though the ball did strike Kode Sano on the arm from Robin Roof's punch-out. Just like in recent matches against Utrecht and Sparta, the home side's attacking game sparked only sporadically in the opening period, and their best chance arrived after 15 minutes when defender Ivan Marquez gave the ball away. Weghorst chipping into the side netting. He got his chance with Brian Brobbey nursing a knock, although the number 9 was on the bench. Despite the experienced players that Ajax had on the field, their only other decent first-half chance was a header from Kenneth Taylor. Steven Berghuis was playing out on the left-hand side, which meant that he was often cutting in on his weaker right foot. But Jordan Henderson's dinked pass was perfect for his midfield partner. Roofs, though, made the save. Taylor would have actually had plenty of time to bring the ball down and use his feet. Also included from the off was Davy Klaassen, who made his 250th Eredivisie appearance, the first to reach that landmark for Ajax since Frank de Boer in 1996. However, he couldn't cap it with a 102nd goal. Another let-off for NAC. Just before the hour, Francesco Farioli chose to change things. Mika Hodz and Kian Fitzjim coming on for Bertrand Traoré and defender Daniele Rugani. But moments later, they fell behind. And to make matters worse, it was a former Ajax player that did the damage. Winger Sonja Hansen, crashing in a beauty from 25 yards. The first time he'd scored since also netting against his old club back in December. It meant that they'd conceded the first goal in each of their last 5 matches. Only the third time that has ever happened in the league. And the first since the 2005-2006 season. Stung by the goal, when they dominated the game, Ajax then surged forward in search of a response. Anton Kay putting his head in where it hurts to help set up an opportunity. One which nearly led to an immediate equaliser. Kotz denied on the line while Taylor could only skew his follow-up shot wide. At which point the referee quickly allowed the physios on to deal with Kay and Marquez. That perhaps benefited NAC more, allowing them some respite from the coming Ajax storm. They sat 14th at the start of play, a full 40 points behind Ajax. With little for them to play for except an outside chance of snatching a final European playoff slot, they were playing with freedom and without any real pressure. The pressure on the home players, in contrast, was ramping up, and they didn't seem to be dealing with it well. And when Sami Oisa ran at Klaassen, it opened up some space for Bashar Ernel right through the middle. He might not have taken his chance, but Brian Pereira, following up, did. And suddenly, NAC smelt blood. Their coach, Roy Meyer, said he and the players could sense the unease and the unrest on the pitch and in the stands, and they upped their game as a result. They were certainly fortunate with how the ball fell to their right back. He scored just his second senior goal. But they were the better and more effective side in the second half. And when Oisa was allowed to deliver a brilliant solo third inside the final 10 minutes, the game was well and truly up. Ajax fans had begun the day dreaming of a potential title celebration. They ended it in a barely conceivable position. Their 9-point lead 3 games ago reduced now to just 1. And a first defeat to NAC since November 2005. Those taken off could hardly believe what they were seeing. That feeling was mirrored around the stadium and on the pitch. The fans beginning to leave in their droves. Those that had stayed around gave another of their former players a warm reception when he came on, Lasse Schöne, replacing Hansen in the closing stages. The game was already done, and if they can't find a way of managing the pressure and nervousness, PSV are in a prime position to take back the title. They've conceded 8 goals in the last 3 matches and scored only 1. But it is still in Ajax's hands. Win their remaining 2 in Groningen and at home to FC Twente, and they'll be champions. NAC have NAC Breda and then Heracles. So a dramatic end to a potentially pivotal weekend in the Eredivisie. PSV's win means they and Ajax are at least now guaranteed direct entry to the Champions League next season. But the title race is wide open again. And nothing is yet decided at the bottom. Utrecht could still take 3rd, while all sides down to 14th could conceivably finish in the top half. With a penultimate midweek round to come, we'll be back in a few days with all the action from that. Until then, from me, Jonathan Beck, it's goodbye.